God pushed me and pushed me. He wanted to see that. God wanted to see how much he can push a human being. I tried my best.
Hey guys, in today's video we're counting down the top 5 most emotional Jean-Claude Van Damme scenes. My guest is Jason Bright, one half of the pop duo Fly By Midnight. Make sure to check him out on Instagram and check out their YouTube channel. I think you're really going to like that music. Linked in the description below. But anyway, on to the top 5 most emotional Van Damme scenes. You start off. We'll go down. Like, I want the best last, right? So start with number 5 if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I wanted ones that a couple that maybe weren't exactly what everyone would gravitate to, but one of, I'd say my bottom one, Universal Soldier: The Return, when his partner Maggie, he finds out that she is a Unisol as well. Unisol, is that a soldier as well?
Yeah, sure.
And like in the beginning of the movie, they like weirdly build that they have this friendship, which you very rarely in Van Damme movies, I feel like you see him have this platonic female friend in a movie. And
Yeah, I can't think of one actually.
And I thought that was so cool that they really built that they were like co-workers and they and then when like she appears and she has like the Universal Soldier thing on, I remember being like, oh shit, that kind of hit home because I think he kills her.
That movie to me was kind of forgettable because I actually, funny enough, watched that in the theater, and I specifically remembered it wasn't really working, right? And I wasn't the only one that sensed that. It was the atmosphere. Like, there were a lot of people in the theater, and there was just one point, like around the middle of the film, where some guy, I don't even know if I'm calling him a heckler because he was honestly just saying what everybody thought. He just said, God, this is horrible. And then the theater was just kind of like,
fair.
Yeah, it's got a point.
Yeah,
I don't even really remember, to be honest, man.
Yeah, it was a weird movie, and they like included Goldberg in it. There was like very odd choices, but I thought that was cool that they at least built a platonic friendship for him. Like even that choice, when we talk about choices in Van Damme movies, how a lot of them are formulaic. Someone thought that would be kind of cool because I think her name was Maggie, and she also was like tight with Van Damme's daughter, his little daughter in that movie.
Oh, so in the movie, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there was like a decent amount of weight to that scene that I was like, oh, okay. Like it's not, there was an importance there. But that was my weird left of center one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And then she was actually played by Kiana Tom, who was like a really big fitness personality at the time. She had a show on ESPN or ESPN2, one of those, like a morning workout show, right? So they basically just got everybody kind of known who were like into fitness or martial arts or wrestling, right? Goldberg, Michael Jai White, etc. They I don't know if they didn't really focus on the actors so much.
I think that may have been the problem. They went for something, and it may not have been the right.
I'll tell you, the main problem was they had a first time director who was a stunt coordinator, right? And then he directed it. So obviously he did do good with the stunts, but even the opening of the film felt like a live action Universal Studios like attraction that they just filmed. It didn't feel like a movie. It just feels like it feels so artificial, man. Yeah,
when they're like on the Wave Runners or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird. It just felt like a live action, like I said, Universal Studios attraction. It did not feel like a movie.
100%. But yeah, that was my 5 pick. What was yours? You want to go back and forth?
Yeah, we'll go back and forth. We'll go back and forth. My 5th. So I actually had Kickboxer.
Hey, Rick. Where the hell you been?
And try to guess the scene, by the way.
Well, does it have to do with his? I guess not his dad, but his master, I suppose.
No. Actually, well, kind of. Well, his brother. Basically,
of course, yes.
Yeah, so this isn't my scene, by the way, but he did have that emotional scene in the hospital when he found out that his brother couldn't walk anymore. Yes. And he was even basically telling the doctor, make him walk, and he was crying and stuff.
Easy. Yeah, okay. Easy. Take it easy. Take it easy. Easy.
But the scene that I picked was actually when he kicked the palm tree down.
You want me to break my leg?
Oh,
Just the build up in intensity, because basically he went from like this kind of, happy, naive, not that killer instinct you need to beat somebody like Tom Poe. That was the transition. He's doing his training, and then the Xeon guy basically reminding him about his brother, and he's like, "Dude, I'll break my effing leg to knock this palm tree down," which he almost did. That's how serious I am. And then that transition to like where he got really hardcore in the training, and like with fighting, a lot of it comes down to attitude. He didn't have the right attitude, right? But you knew he did. And then he just had to physically build himself up to beat Tong Po at the end. But that was so intense. It just built up, and then after he kicks it down, he just he collapses, and then he feels the pain, because you could cut out your head in the moment, but then afterwards you're gonna suffer the consequences. So he's all. That was intense, man.
I think that really, looking back on it now, that did give so much more gravity towards his entire character arc, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you're right, he was of course a great martial artist in the beginning, but he did have a bit more of this like lax sort of thing, and I think that was a sort of switch that maybe if he didn't have that moment where he became sort of the killer instinct, like you said, that he may not have been able to beat Tom Poe in the end.
Exactly. Such a pivotal moment.
What a great movie. All right, my number 4. This is another weird one, but I think maybe not specifically a scene, but I thought in another mediocre movie, The Order with Van Damme.
I thought at least it was a Sheldon Lettich one.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Another sort of dynamic they put him in was the father-son thing with his dad in that movie, and I thought that just introducing that sort of thing, like that movie weirdly felt like an Indiana Jones. Like there was something in Jerusalem that they definitely went for something interesting, and I just thought like every scene with him and his dad in that, I was like, wow, like weirdly this is really showing like an emotion of sorts, so that was that movie I think is a bit forgettable, but I just like when they kind of challenge Van Damme and put him in something that's not with this sort of Bond girl persona, and I thought that movie did a good job of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I love their relationship. You could tell they had kind of like one of those father-son relationships where they're like friends, right? And then he's just kind of like that happy-go-lucky guy. So I always like Van Damme when he's the happier, charismatic, and not so much like the dark and depressed, which he's done a lot over the last 20 years, that really dark and depressed type character.
When all you have left are the failures of the past.
It's not as, the world's enough dark and depressed. We need happy Van Damme, right?
What's it supposed to do? Make my dick bigger?
No, I agree. And I think that movie did have this, there was an undertone of it being, of course, people were dying and getting killed and stuff, but it was weirdly, there was this levity to it all.
Yeah, exactly. Even the way the cinematography was brighter and, just everything.
Yeah. And in the realm of Indiana Jones, right? Indiana, Harrison Ford is risking his life, but it always felt really fun.
Yeah, it's a fun ride. People are dying, but hey, man, this is a fun ride.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciated it for that. And you're right. It came down to the lighting too. It very much, look at Cyborg compared to that. Cyborg was so bleak.
Why? I like the death. I like the misery. I like
this world! I love that father-son dynamic. I thought that was really cool.
Nice. Yeah, good choice.
You want some advice? Take your fancy clothes and your black silk underwear and go back to Disneyland.
Double Impact. Another Sheldon Lettich movie, but so freaking amazing. And the scene specifically was the Alex character, right? When he finds out that the Chad character went there to rescue Danielle, and just the rage and the jealousy of him thinking what they're actually doing, and the way they kind of cut back and forth and he's getting more drunk, so he's kind of, when people get drunk they start getting a little more the emotions amplify, right? And they're in less control of themselves. I mean, he even like punches that phone. And just the buildup of everything, man. Like, was he like blow all that stuff out of his nose, and he's like, just man, like that's a good performance. And I think any guy could kind of relate to that, especially in their 20s, where you really like a girl, man, and you know, I'm not saying that she's cheating on you, but just the thought of that maybe happen, right?
And there's a sweet picture.
Alex, I tried to call you. Somebody searched me at the office.
Even if it's a girl you're not dating, you don't like you like the possibility of maybe you being with her someday, and just the thought that she's with another guy. Just again, this is more when you're in your 20s and you're less mature. I mean, I know you're still in your 20s technically, but you're in your late 20s, so you're almost 30. But just that raw, you know, rage and jealousy is something that we can all relate to, man. Totally.
Oh, and he did a great job in that movie. I mean, I think if I could have seen a sequel per se, I would have loved to see that sort of thing. Like even the way they slicked his hair back, there was just like that was another fun movie, man. That was great.
People were convinced that that he had a brother in real life.
Yeah.
Like Sheldon Lettich told that story. He said he was literally in the gym and there was a guy saying the guy didn't know Sheldon Lettich directed that movie. But he said, hey, there's two Van Dammes. He's like, really? Yeah, this new movie, Double Impact. And Sheldon's like, no, it's the same guy. And then guy's like, no, trust me, he's got a brother. And Sheldon's like,
so this guy totally bought into it. He's not the only one, but this is somebody that I actually ran into, had a conversation with. I didn't tell him who I was, and he was just saying, no, my bullshit. Van Damme, that's not the same guy. Van Damme has got a brother. And you can see it clearly in that movie. It's two different people. Like, okay, I guess you know more about it than I do.
Apparently.
There's two of them.
So that was
that's the biggest compliment since you directed that. So obviously you're directing his performance as two different characters. I can't think of like a better compliment than that.
That's the best. I've described that as the best backhanded compliment I have ever gotten.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, that movie's just in general, I think that was one of Van Damme's earlier acting. Like I was like, oh, I think he's got like I appreciated them giving him that opportunity to flex a bit on that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
This is just another random emotion one, but I loved one of my favorite scenes in Maximum Risk is I don't know if you remember, this is kind of like a very niche sort of thing, but he's a cop and he's in the taxi cab, and the cab driver like weirdly gets involved in this to help him. And and it's like this like really deep moment where the cab driver he says he's like writing a book. So he's clearly like driving to pursue some sort of creative endeavor. He never gets inspired. And he kind of says something to Van Damme along the lines of like, I forget it. He like Van Damme's like, all right, drop me off and then like, let's go on our separate ways. And he's like, nah, man, this is like my moment of inspiration. Like I need to be involved in whatever the heck is going on. And he ends up dying. He gets shot.
Yeah, I remember.
Unexpected development. The whole thing's so scary.
And I was like, shit, that kind of hit home.
You were supposed to go home and write. Who needs home? I'm always working anyway.
Like, of course, in a typical action movie, like 10 minutes after they completely move on from that, but it was like this dude's kind of caught in the crossfire, and he never got to put out that book. This poor dude.
It's actually kind of sad. Yeah, it's almost what we talked about, you know, like earlier. I mean, at least that guy was trying, but you know, things happen, and he never got. That could have been an amazing book. We all missed out though. We never got to read that book.
100%. I thought that movie had like weirdly really good character dynamics. From that to even Jean-Claude and when Natasha Henstridge's character thinks that he's still his brother, and they're like about to hook up, and he very much pulls off this sort of like this beautiful woman here, but I can't do this. You know, I can't do this with her.
Can do it.
And I thought that whole movie made some really interesting choices that once again weren't very formulaic, I think, for him.
Yeah, and he would go on to work with that director Ringo Lam a few other times, and he always raved about Ringo Lam as Ringo Lam being one of those directors that could really kind of you know, stretch him and test him and get these performances out of him. Because they would do Replicant, and then they would do that prison movie in Hell. But it all started in, I think, 1997 with Maximum Risk. So yeah, that was a good one.
Following in the footsteps of action director John Woo, Lam made the Tinseltown trip to make the all-kicking, all-punching Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle Maximum Risk.
Yeah, wow. Even saying In Hell and Replicant, although Replicant was an interesting movie too, but like those were some really interesting Van Damme movies.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You know, like they all had this very cohesive, like darker, stylistic sort of take. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my number 3 was Lionheart. And there's a few different scenes, you know, like the one when he basically beats Attila, and I mean, he could literally kill him if he wanted to. But the thing is that he's got nothing against Attila. Like, you know, Attila doesn't even come into the story. We don't even know about him till almost the end of the film, which is kind of an interesting structure. Usually you introduce, like, the villain, you know, early on. But there's nothing personal between the two guys. You know, it's something else. But my scene is really the one that takes place after that, though. And Lionheart was that film where, like, people really took notice, especially the bigger studios, because Universal Pictures distributed it in the U.S., right? It was initially under, like, that smaller Imperial Entertainment. But then I guess when they did some test screenings, they said, you know, this guy's got something. He's bigger and could be bigger than just like the Karate Guy that we've seen him in, you know, Bloodsport and Kickboxer. This guy could really go mainstream and not just be relegated to the Karate Guy, which is what Van Damme always wanted to do. He wanted to be bigger and do like action movies like Arnold did, not these karate films per se. But it was really the scene when he's with the niece, and, you know, he's all bloodied up, right? Because he just almost got his butt kicked by Attila. He's got his broken rib and everything. And, you know, she's packing the suitcase, and he's basically just telling her that he can't go with them. And she's like crying, and you gotta go, you gotta come, you know. And then the Legionnaires are outside. You could tell they're like, oh man, this is heartbreaking, you know. And these are like tough, stoic men. But like it even like hits them. It's like, God, man, do we really gotta take him back, you know? But Van Damme's performance and just like the there's a real sweetness about that character. It's like, look, he just beat this really tough guy up, but this is just a really sweet guy having this conversation.
I've got to go back to an ugly place, and then if I don't, I'll be running for the rest of my life. And you and your mommy will be running with me.
You know, that he really just can't go stay with them. Otherwise, they'd just be running the whole time, and he doesn't really want them to have to deal with that, you know? Like, for his benefit, it would be good. Yeah, let's just keep running, guys. But again, this is how caring he is. He doesn't want to put that on them, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, another example of a movie that there wasn't really this love interest minus, I guess, the antagonist that he sort of had a thing with for a second, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's also why we like the character more, is because he never hooked up with Cynthia.
Oh, true.
Like she was, and let's be honest, man. She's an attractive woman, and she's basically, you know, here I am, like, do what you want, like, you know. But he's like, no, you know, like, that's not what he broke up for. You gotta respect that, man, because again, he's not really doing anything in general that would really benefit himself. He's not just, you know, going to that like basic, trying to fulfill his basic desire needs or whatever. It's more important. So that's why we really connect with that character, right?
There were so many layers to that movie. Even his relationship with I guess, like, not his trainer per se, but the
manager.
Hey, who brought you here, sucker?
Oh, the man! What an amazing relationship they found a way to like build in there. And like, and he kind of knew that after that fight he was done, right? Like he didn't he tell him, like, you know, don't keep going, essentially, like, it's good, we're fine, like, worry about yourself. And
we don't need the money, man. I got us a deal. I told you, 50-50 all the way down the line. Well, I'm gonna split it with you, man. 50-50 all the way, man, just like I said I would.
Yeah, it was just, that movie has so many emotional layers to it. I think in my opinion, that's the most emotional Van Damme movie.
Yeah, in that orchestra, that score helps. And yeah, but going back to Joshua, what a beautiful bromance, because when they first met, look, he doesn't care about Leon. He's just trying to make a couple bucks off the guy and use him, right? But they develop a real relationship where, you know, even Van Damme asks him near the end, right before the fight, like, you care about me. And it's just like, dude, they generally care about each other, man. Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I think that movie had so many beautiful layers, and it was just a great movie. I think that was my number. Was that my number 2 or 3? It's probably my number. Yeah. So I guess for me, the Timecop sequence of when the sort of callback of in the beginning when she's in the mall and he puts his hands over her eyes, and then later on when he goes back in time, and she tries to turn around and see him and he doesn't want her to see him, and I was like, wow, like, could you imagine this sort of heartbreak that he must have to be even in the presence of her again?
Yeah.
Like, they just found these like ways similar to Lionheart of like really adding weight to what could have just been like a sci-fi action movie. And I think that's what sold my fiance on Van Damme. I think
nice.
that of her just being like, wow. And he reverses it at the end, right? Like, he gets her back, which goes against every like time rule in the book that you can't really do that, but sure. But like something about that movie, I was like, I remember the first time I saw it and I was like, wow, I can't believe they kill her in the beginning.
One man is determined to stop him.
I cannot go back to save her. This scumbag is not going back to steal money.
Like that was like eerily dark, even for a Van Damme movie. They really went, But
yeah, Timecop. That, and again, it's funny what really sticks with us. It's not like, hey, I remember when he kicked that guy in the face. It's like,
exactly.
No, it's like, that's not why we remember Timecop, man. It's the moments like that, the human moments. That's why these are action films and they're martial arts films. But it's really, and again, that's what a lot of these newer, especially in that genre, are missing. They don't have these real human moments that you're gonna like really connect with and remember long term.
100%, and I think, yeah, I don't know. I think we're starting to even see that in like I brought up Marvel movies a couple of times, but I think their inspiration and the weight and gravity of these circumstances in these universes are becoming less heavy, and I don't know if it's just that they're running out of ideas or something, but I think like these sort of micro emotions in some of these Van Damme movies were great. It's not like he's saving the world all the time. Those are the movies that I think we really like. Lionheart was such a micro story. There's no macro to that. Like, this is one guy's very small journey.
Wait, you... Hey, man, you want to use the phone? Come on, let's go. Hey.
Like, and yeah, I think Timecop, same exact thing, that they found a way to. I guess my point to wrap that up is like, it easily could have been a movie about him going after the guy that's using time to win elections or whatever he was doing, but being they added that sort of personal touch at the end, that not only does he stop the bad guy and save the world essentially, but he kind of gets this very, his own personal journey. Like, that made that movie a billion times better in my opinion.
Oh, big time, because basically you have your main A plot, and then it merges with like the B subplot, and then they basically have to they like simultaneously resolve, like they're directly linked in a way. So it's just really good screenwriting, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still kicking. I must be on Broadway.
My number 2, I gotta go with Bloodsport. And specifically the scene near the end when he's fighting Chong Li, final match in the Kumite, and he gets blinded, right? Just the just all the looks that he gives, and like the frustration and the anger, and like he's just in that state, but then he's able to like calm himself and remember the training, especially the blindfold training, right? Which they set up earlier in the film. But just the way they cut it, and just how the score comes into play, it's just like, he's gonna be okay, guys. He's still gonna be able to beat him, even blind. But he, just like, again, the anger and the frustration, and because the movie is all about honor, like the character, that's what he stands for. And the guy he's fighting is cheating. It's like, that sucks, man. But anyway, man, like I know a lot of people will make fun of that, but for me, that's just brilliant acting. All the different looks and the full gamut of emotions of having the anger and frustration build up, and then like that moment where okay, he becomes calm and grounded, right? And basically, you know, it just showcases he's a true master at the martial arts. Now, that also kind of he described that scene, by the way, in just that movie.
After 5-6 years of being in Los Angeles, I was pushing, and nothing happened, and pushing to a point I was over. So I fell down into the floor in Norton Avenue. I just fell down like a bag of potato. It's like almost like God pushed me and pushed me. He wanted to see that. God wanted to see how much he can push a human being. I tried my best. People were making fun of me in Belgium because I work with. He's a punching ball of Chuck Norris, is this, is that, is all that stuff, and they made fun of my father. Hey, how's your son doing? Punching ball of Chuck Norris. I gave up everything. I gave up my dog. I gave up my bird. I was having a talking bird. They both die of sadness. I will never forgive myself. I came back in Belgium. I didn't know they died. I gave up 2 animals for this, and then it's like the phone ring. I pick up the phone and Menachem gone and called me, and he said pass by the office. And that Bloodsport happened and made me famous. I put all the karate I knew and all the rage, I put this in the movie. I put everything. It was getting in cavities, you know, all American, all fucking white teeth and all perfect. I was a rage. I did everything and I worked 20 hours a day. We closed the door of the studio. We did the final fight in half a day with Bolov. Half a day for a final fight. Half a day, 4 cameras, low angle. Let's go. 1 shot, wide angle. Half a day. They need 2 days, 3 weeks for a fucking fight.
So he moved out to, you know, LA like in 82 with his buddy Michelle Kesey. They were struggling for years, right? They had to steal food. They literally stole food like in the grocery store, I heard, to eat. Like they were struggling, like true struggling artists, living in his car at one time. But basically, that was the culmination of getting that shot in Bloodsport like 4 years later. The dream is there, and he's got the opportunity, right? So he let it all out, like all that kind of pent-up frustration in his real life, trying to make it, sleeping in his car, coming over here when people say, oh, man, that's just a dream. Nobody makes it. You're not going to make it, man. Dude didn't even speak English. But again, taking that, and any actor needs to draw on their real life, taking that and just putting it all out there. It was beautiful, man.
Well, I think he knew, and he's said this in a couple of interviews, that's why he went back to edit it and stuff. But he knew that getting this shot was probably the shot, you know, because to your point, like being on the grind that long, my God, I can't fathom it. And I also, yeah, I mean, I very much relate to the notion of when I moved to LA, when I was pursuing this, no one in my group, no one in my circle, my family, no one has done it before. So there is this like such a doubt that's cast on you, even though like they're supportive, but they're so leery. They're like,
and that's extra pressure on you.
So much.
Hey guys, for more on Justin's story and to find out more about his group Fly By Midnight, they're really blown up, by the way, which is great. Check out the first part of the interview that I did with him, linked in the description below. It's a really cool journey and history into what is going to be what I think pop superstardom. It's already pop stardom.
And I think still, you know, and this is a little bit of a segue, but still there's this very old school mentality of like my hometown. They're like, are you still doing the music thing? I'm like, what would make you think that I stopped? Well, I don't hear you on the radio. And I'm like,
wow,
what a dated perspective. But same for acting. I mean, like there are so many actors here in LA now that are entry level opportunities that they're working guest star roles on TV. They're not massive, but they're making a great living. And I think when Van Damme probably moved to LA, I don't know if there was that middle ground, you know, that there were like 2 massive movies a year and we're getting 5 massive movies a week now, you know? So I can only imagine when he came to LA, what a different place it was. You were shooting for the number 1 spot. There was no like entry level really. It's so crazy to think about, but I mean, Bloodsport, I think that's my number one. But I was gonna once again throw a little bit of a weird one. I thought his relationship with the American, his friend, the wrestler.
Oh, Ray Jackson, yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I thought, I've so many brothers or best friends that I consider brothers for over 10 years now, and there's just something so cool about going to, a different country essentially. The fact that they kind of link up, they play that arcade game in the beginning.
Yeah, sure.
And they both kind of realize that they're in this together, and I just thought it was like that added such a different dynamic too. That like when he ends up in the hospital, like God, did they paint the bad guy to be so brutal right up until the moment where he blinds him. Like they just added more and more layers to like Van Damme better kick this guy's ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think his friendship in that, I remember watching that when I was younger, and I was like, oh man, that's the sort of friend I want. Like the one that's sort of like rooting him. Remember when they keep cutting to him when Van Damme's kicking ass and Ray Jackson's like, yeah, just like like continually cutting back to that. But yeah, I thought that their friendship was really just like well fleshed out and added another dynamic. And when honestly, I think the weirdest part of that movie was probably his relationship with the reporter.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was like maybe jabbed in there, but I thought the friendship kind of made up for that in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah, and it adds more to the final fight. There's more at stake. I mean, it almost kind of becomes semi-revenge film, right?
Forget about getting back at Chong Li for Ray. You have a chance to take it all tomorrow. Do you understand? You can be the first Westerner to win this thing.
It's like, oh, this guy, like, he didn't have to stomp his head. He could have just won the fight. He went the extra, like, what an asshole mile on my buddy. Like, how dare he, right? And then he mocks Van Damme with the bandana. It's like, hey, it's like, oh man, yeah.
What is that? That's Bolo Young.
Bolo Young, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see? They had that reunion maybe like 5-6 years back.
Bruce Lee, and then Jean-Claude Van Damme, and then who? After Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is the next? Nobody.
Van Damme.
Oh, from the Van Damme reality show, talking about like there's Bruce Lee, and then there's Van Damme. Is like, who's next? It's like nobody really transcended and went above the that genre to become mainstream, right? It's crazy how some people do. And that happens like in every arena where like Michael Jordan, like, look, dude, people who are into basketball, people who aren't into basketball know Michael Jordan, just like people who aren't into boxing know Mike Tyson. So there's always like those guys like Bruce Lee and Van Damme. People who aren't even into martial arts know of those guys and take inspiration, etc.
Well, that's, and I think that's part of the bigger discussion, similar to the entry level thing I was talking about before. But I think the stars, like the household names, are becoming less and less because there's this sort of entry level, like, I mean, look, we're still talking about Tom Cruise. and I don't know if in the past 10 years of Hollywood, there's been a household new name, like, and same for basketball. I mean, like LeBron, like you got these sort of people, but that's still not a new, roster addition. He's been around a minute as well. So
yeah, it is interesting. It goes with bands too, right? Like there's no Metallica or AC/DCs anymore. I mean, they were just global phenomenons.
I'll even go on the pop side. I mean, Taylor Swift has been like the name for years and years now. Like there are so many artists making a living like myself that are just not household names, but are getting by and doing what they're doing for a living. Mm-hmm. And I think, this is another random example, but I weirdly got invited to go see SmackDown Wrestling last month.
Oh.
I haven't been to wrestling since I was like 5 years old. And and I thought it was so bizarre that all the promos on the screens during commercial breaks were for wrestlers like Goldberg, Sting, Hulk Hogan. I'm like, whoa,
old school guys, way old school.
Whoa, you move pretty fast for a big guy, you know that?
Yeah, like where are the new names of today? And in reality, there's hundreds of new wrestlers in the new federation, and none of them are making an impact. Like none of them are resonating in the same way.
It's interesting. It is interesting. Let me give my number one, and I'm actually kind of shocked that you didn't put this in your top 5, man.
All right,
JCVD.
Oh, of course.
The monologue.
Yep. No.
And Nick Cage even gave him props.
I don't know if it's really like a secret. I'm pretty blunt about everything I like, whether other people like it or not. But it's Jean-Claude Van Damme, JCVD.
Oh, JCVD is incredible.
And
that monologue?
Yeah, well, what I liked about it was I really saw his dramatic abilities and his potential. I see a lot of pain in his eyes, and he has a lot of gravitas in that movie.
God, that made me cry, that monologue.
Nick Cage, arguably the greatest actor of his generation, basically said, look, Van Damme was phenomenal. He's an amazing actor. Now, granted, Van Damme did play himself, so that's a perfect role for him.
That's right. That is right.
But just the brutal honesty of exposing himself, because, and they do it in one take. That's what makes it so powerful, because a lot of my other examples, it helped with the editing, right? That's what one job of editing. I mean, it should amplify certain emotions, right? But with the JCVD, shooting it, it's like a 6-minute scene, one take, and the self-reflection. He's talking about the women. He's talking about the drugs. He's talking about even kind of feeling guilty that he's the one that got all the success. And he even says, look, there were a lot of talented guys, even more so than me.
Et aussi en sachant qu'ils ont des qualités beaucoup plus énormes que moi.
But he was the one that made it for, you could say for whatever reason. There are a lot of very good reasons. Yeah. But just in general, it's like the self-reflection, man. Because even if someone were to just do that by themselves in front of the mirror and be like that truthful, that brutally honest, that sincere, that's not even easy for someone to do themselves. That shows real growth. But for him to actually do that in front of literally like millions of people, just bearing his soul, like, you got to give him credit. That is not easy to do, like I said, just by yourself in your bathroom. A lot of people lie to themselves about certain things, and to be brutally honest and reflect on everything that you've done wrong. And just to spill that to the audience, it's like, you got to give the guy an Oscar for that, man.
Oh, I mean, that's like the pivotal, that was his comeback. Right? Yeah. And I think it's so cool because I remember watching an interview where he was talking about, he was promoting Nowhere to Run. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about like, it's a drama movie.
I was pushing a lot for that script, and I want that type of movie. I want to do that type of old-fashioned movie. It's a very simple movie, very pure, and the relationship is great between me and the kids and Rosanna. Romance, love story. I like it.
It's a drama movie, and like he's been dying to do. It seemed like he's been dying to do something like that for forever. Yeah. He never got like the right script or the right shot to do it. And I mean, I thought that was super powerful. And also there was a chance that wasn't going to be perceived well, you know what I mean? Like, and I think he took such a risk because it could have been more of a mockery that people were like, this sort of introspective, monologue is like so bizarre and kind of like Macbethy, and I thought it was great.
他也不明白啊，我这也不是在拍深坑啊。
That movie was so, and honestly, I mean, what I'm curious. I think we spoke about this briefly before too, but like since then, we all go through journeys as creatives of stuff we want to make, and I feel like he like rubber banded back to being like, all right, I did the drama thing. Let me just do the most goofy, making fun of myself thing from here on out. It's really interesting, huh?
Well, the thing is, a script in a film like that only comes along so often. He had made comments and said, because he being self-aware, right? He was very self-aware, obviously, in that scene, in that film, just in his life at that moment. He literally said, I only want to do great movies like this going forward. The problem is that I just don't think he was offered the right scripts, because again, it's like you're not going to be able to make a movie of that caliber back to back to back to back, right? Like, I don't know the history behind the filmmaker that made that, but that's not something that guy could even replicate. Like, those kind of movies just come along like maybe once in a generation or every once in a while, very rare. Just like, so for you being a music artist, you might love all your songs, but there might just be one or two that like the entire world falls in love with. And it's just like that biggest hit ever. But it's like you can't expect all 12 songs on your album to have that impact. You know, even if you try, you just can't.
Or to replicate it after the fact. I think you bring up a really good point that like when a certain song, when artists have that one hit per se, they're constantly being pressured to do that again. Like I can only imagine Van Damme's entire career, they were like, but you got to give us another movie like Bloodsport, you know? He was just like so exhausted on it. But I guess I'm even saying like from JCVD on, where he played himself, he did these other movies where, or he did, what was it, the Amazon TV show where he plays himself?
Oh, Jean-Claude Van Johnson.
My name is Jean-Claude Van Damme. I used to be super famous.
And I was like, I like wanted to love that so much, but it almost felt like the opposite. Like now I played myself and showed the dramatic, let me show how goofy. Like that in between the, what was it, the GoDaddy commercial where he's like doing the splits, and it's just like, I feel like he's on a different journey now as a creative. And it's like you said with music artists, right? Like my next album we're writing right now, I do not want it to be like the last one. So there may be people that loved parts of the last one that aren't going to resonate with this, but hopefully it captures a new audience. So as a fan of Van Damme, I like commend that. Even the one he did for Netflix France recently, right?
Oh, The Last Mercenary, yeah.
Like I understand what they're it's like a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing he's going for. Maybe that will appeal to people, but I don't know if that's going to appeal to the Lionhearts fans.
Not so much. That's more like the Jackie Chan audience, I think. You know, kind of like comedy, action, martial arts film.
But I mean, he could have done 100 Bloodsports and we could have been bored of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that respect, and it comes back to like where you were saying, some of the action heroes of today that are trying to break, it feels like their movies are the same exact thing over and over again. And I just for me as a personal fan, I wish in the future he would just do something a bit more dramatic again. Kind of what I think Stallone is trying to do with some of apparently he has a TV show coming up. Did you hear about
Tulsa
that?
King, yeah.
Yeah, which maybe that really adds gravity to his acting again. You know, like I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like they're going a little. There'll be some comedic, more lighthearted moments in it. You know, even though he's playing this mobster, he goes to that small town to clean it up or do whatever he's doing. I guess he becomes a king there, right? But yeah. I still want another Rambo movie, though, to be honest.
I didn't see the last one. They said it was pretty gory.
It's like an adult version of Home Alone. Like it really kind of plays like Home Alone, man. But instead of, like he kills all these people that go into his home or his cave or what, it's interesting. It didn't have to be a Rambo movie. Like they could have literally just given it a different title because he didn't even have long hair. They could have just called it something else, right? But I quite enjoyed it. I know I seen that in the theater, man. And yeah, I remember because I went with my wife, and then there was like another guy who went by himself, but he kept talking to us after the movie, and then I like to talk Rambo with people, so we talked to him for a little while. But yeah, he liked it too. But a lot of people were turned off by it for whatever reason,